Good glowing day, rad friends. Welcome to this week's sermon covering the pistols of Fallout, but not just any pistols. We are looking at the Revolvers of the series, and another little group that just snuck in there somehow. We'll look at the lore, the real-world inspirations, and interesting obscure information relating to this special group of weapons. So crank up the rads and let out a glory to Adam as we go over the Revolvers of Fallout. The 44 Magnum is the most widespread of all revolvers in the Fallout series, featuring in every single game except for the first Fallout and Fallout Brotherhood of Steel. The 44 Mag was first introduced in Fallout 2 and is the most powerful pistol in that game, with the exception of the Gauss pistol, which is kind of its own thing, and I covered Gauss weapons in my energy weapons videos, so it doesn't really count. The single shot damage is the main selling point for this weapon, but shockingly, it has lower than normal AP required per shot as well. Usually high damage per shot will be tempered by a high AP cost, but the 44 gets the best of both worlds. The way that they balance this weapon, however, is that it has a very low capacity at 6, which is standard for a lot of revolvers of this caliber, and it also has just awful range. With the lowest range of all pistols in the game, this gun should only be used when up close and personal, and in situations where you aren't fighting big groups of people, or you're going to be reloading a lot. The weapon is very clearly a direct representation of the Smith & Wesson Model 29 with the 4-inch barrel, which may be the reason for the decreased range over the other pistol options. The in-game description is an Easter egg referencing the Dirty Harry movie series, where Clint Eastwood plays a character of the same name. The description reads, "Being that this is the most powerful handgun in the world and can blow your head clean off, you gotta ask yourself one question. Do you feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?" This is a direct quote from Dirty Harry himself, and because of that, I don't think we can really derive much in-world information from it. It is indeed the most powerful conventional handgun, but if we are looking at overall DPS or consider options like the Gauss pistol, it gets overshadowed. The one difference though is that Dirty Harry's 44 has the 6.5-inch barrel, while the Fallout version has the smaller 4-inch one. But that's why we love Fallout. It's a grower, not a shower. There are some other great things about this weapon, like the one modification that is available for it, the Speed Loader. This decreases the amount of AP required to reload, which makes sense, and somehow, inexplicably, increases the range of the weapon from 15 to 20. Now, this doesn't make sense on a number of levels, since a speed loader isn't a modification to the gun itself, but a tool to help load 6 rounds into the cylinder in one go, rather than by hand one by one. So really, this would be more appropriate as an inventory item, but it was likely easier to implement in-game as what is essentially just a different modified weapon. When using the 44 mag, the JHP ammo can increase damage done on target by 1.6 if the enemy is unarmored, and can be a really great option in the early and mid-game. The 44 mag isn't as common as other pistols, but it can be found in 6 different places and is often sold by weapons merchants in the Den, Vault City, New Reno, and San Francisco. The last really great part of this gun is that it's somehow the second cheapest of all pistols in the whole game, which makes its damage per dollar one of the best. Fallout Tactics is the next time we see the 44, and its connection to the Smith & Wesson Model 29 is made even more clear since it is called the 44 M29 revolver. It looks largely the same, although now it has the 6.5-inch barrel like Dirty Harry, and it is no longer the most powerful of all the conventional pistols. It plays second fiddle to the Desert Eagle Mark 19 44, shooting the same round as the Deagle, but doing less damage, and also weighs more, somehow, and has much lower range. It no longer has the lowest range of all pistols though. Maybe that extra barrel length is helping it out, and the AP cost is among the best of all pistol options. Something I find interesting is that Fallout Tactics has a habit of copying over the Fallout 2 weapon descriptions for almost every weapon that they share in common. No doubt this helped with cutting down on the amount of work the developers had to do, but it would often lead to errors or misleading descriptions because they would change the look or the stats of the weapons and tactics. The 44 has a new weapon description though, which calls it the most powerful revolver of its time, with a muzzle energy 30% greater than its contemporaries. I will admit I didn't look into this in depth, but what I did find on ballistics charts seems to refute this. But hey, maybe we can chalk it up to the Fallout world just being different. The 44 is not very common, and the 44 mag ammunition is likewise not as common as many other rounds, but can be found used by a raider in Freeport and on a body of a dead civilian in Quincy. We see the 44 next in Fallout 3, but almost every single version is now sporting a scope. Visually, it is very similar to the Fallout 2 and Fallout Tactics versions, and is obviously a Smith & Wesson, as evidenced by the small badge on the upper part of the grip. The 44 once again takes the crown for the highest damage of all conventional pistols, while also having the highest DPS, among the highest critical chance, the highest critical damage, and most accuracy. It is balanced though by requiring more AP than any other pistol, has low item health that will require more maintenance, and the 44 Magnum rounds are much rarer than other pistol ammunition types. It's also interesting that it isn't that much more valuable than other inferior weapons, which seems to be a trend for this weapon across the games. The 44 has 5 unique versions, and I want to look at them in ascending order of potency. The first is only worth a casual mention since it is not obtainable by the player, and it is Werner's Magnum. Werner is an ex-slave that convinces the Lone Wanderer to help him overthrow the slavers in the Pit DLC, and his weapon is identical to the vanilla version, just with extra HP, and is only available with console commands. Paulson's revolver is next on the list, and it was introduced in the Mothership Zeta DLC. This revolver is unique for a few reasons, and is the primary weapon for a man known as Paulson, who is an old cowboy that had been abducted alongside his wife and son by the Zetans, and has been slumbering in cryostasis ever since. Because of that, he has a blistering hatred for aliens, and gets revenge every chance he can with his trusty revolver. There are 2 versions of this gun, one that is the non-player version that is only obtainable via console commands, and another version that can only be acquired if Paulson dies by looting his body. It is unique in the game for a few reasons, the first being that it is the only non-scoped 44 that the player has access to, which makes sense given that if he really is a 19th century cowboy, he wouldn't have been using a scope, or at least a modern one anyway. Secondly, this weapon fires multiple pellets, for lack of a better term, with each shot, each doing a little damage, and each capable of rolling a critical strike. This means that while its average per shot damage is behind all other unique 44s, it has the potential to do up to 315 damage in one shot if all pellets strike the target and all of them score a critical. That's obviously pretty rare, and the critical chance is the same as all other 44 mags, so it does have potential to hit super hard, especially if you're doing a critical build. It suffers from the same weaknesses as the base 44 though, low durability and high AP cost, so I would really only recommend this weapon in very specific circumstances. It is also funny that the 44 mag ammunition somehow magically acts like a shotgun when loaded into his revolver. Although, yes, there are some niche revolvers that can fire small 410 shotgun shells like the Taurus Judge, alongside a variety of large pistol rounds, so maybe we can just use our imagination and pretend that that is what's going on here. The next most powerful unique variant is Blackhawk, which looks exactly like the vanilla 44, just sporting some stat boosts. It does 20 more damage per shot and has 10 more critical damage, only trading for a little bit of durability. The only way to get this pistol is by completing the Agatha's Song quest, where the Lone Wanderer is asked to recover the Soil Stradivarius violin and some sheet music from Vault 92, after which Agatha will reward the player with the weapon. She says that her husband modified it in some way and would regularly practice shooting with it, and whatever it was that he did to the weapon to modify it, it worked, because this is one powerful weapon. The second most powerful 44 mag variant is called Callahan's Magnum and does 30 more damage than the base weapon, 15 more critical damage, and incredibly, it has the lowest AP cost of any 44 variant. Really, the only drawback is that it is a little less durable, but not by a whole lot, and that makes this the strongest of all obtainable conventional pistols in the whole game. This gun was introduced in the Broken Steel add-on and is only available if the player chooses one specific ending to the DLC. When deciding what target to choose to destroy with an orbital strike, if the player chooses to hit the Citadel, which is the Brotherhood of Steel base, the player will get the chance to visit the Smoking Ruins. It is only in the ruins of the Citadel that Callahan's Magnum can be found in a safe inside the small explorable interior space. So if you decide to hit the Enclave mobile base crawler instead, you don't get a chance to get this weapon. The Revolver's name is yet another reference to Dirty Harry, since the main character and namesake of the movies is Harry Callahan, which is even more of a direct reference. And now, we have made it to the big daddy of them all. But this comes with a catch, because it is not obtainable by the player at all. The Mysterious Stranger's Magnum is the only weapon everyone's favorite stranger of danger uses, and it is a non-scoped version just like Paulson's revolver. This weapon does a game-breaking 9,000 damage per shot, and to put that into perspective, the extremely lethal 44 that we just mentioned, Callahan's Magnum, only does 65 per shot. Technically, that 9,000 number is the critical damage, but it has a 100% critical chance, so it only ever deals this amount of damage. This is more in the service of game mechanics than anything else though, because the Mysterious Stranger is meant to finish off an enemy in VATS after he is summoned, and to make sure he can power through any and all targets, his weapon was given an absurd amount of damage. Since the player was never meant to have it, should one use console commands to get it, and has no Pip-Boy icon. It cannot be picked up if dropped from the inventory, and placing it in a companion's inventory for them to use will result in the weapon doing 0 damage. Knowing that this weapon does 9,000 damage makes it even funnier when he shoots a target more than once, because that Mysterious Stranger loves to pump targets full of lead. Fallout New Vegas has the 44 Magnum with a bunch of variants as well, a continuation of Fallout's love song to this revolver. Most weapons that are in both Fallout New Vegas and Fallout 3 are balanced differently, but the 44 in New Vegas is awfully close to the 44 in Fallout 3. 44 Magnum rounds are even more rare in New Vegas now though, and the 44 is no longer the top dog when it comes to conventional pistols. It does get 2 upgrade options, the 44 revolver frame, which increases the weapon condition by 50% and changes the looks. It is now stainless steel rather than blued steel, and the grips are darker as well. The second upgrade allows for a 1.86 magnification scope to the gun, making it look just like the 44 mag in Fallout 3. The weapon is also pretty common to find either at weapon vendors or other NPCs like the Fiends, Viper Leaders, or Legionary Assassins. One of my favorite weapons in New Vegas is a unique variant known as the Mysterious Magnum. This isn't the Mysterious Stranger's Magnum, no, that is a bit different. This is just the Mysterious Magnum. It does a bit more damage and critical damage, fires faster, and requires less AP. All this goodness is balanced out by quite literally halving the weapon's condition, so it can be difficult to keep in tip-top shape. The weapon can only be obtained from the Lonesome Drifter, a very intriguing NPC that can be found near the El Dorado Dry Lake. It can either be bought from him directly, rewarded if he is recruited as entertainment for a quest, or looted off his body if the courier is feeling just a little less charitable that day. And it also has one of my favorite effects of any weapon. Every time the revolver is drawn, it will play part of the tune that plays when the Mysterious Stranger appears in VATS. And when holstered, it will also play a different Mysterious Stranger related riff. There's even an awesome touch where if the player is sneaking, the riffs will play but at a lower volume, and if the weapon is given to a companion, it will still play the tune when drawn and holstered by them. Since the Lonesome Drifter by all accounts seems to be the son of the Mysterious Stranger, it is likely that this was an old weapon that he once used, especially since in dialogue, the Lonesome Drifter mentions that his father had left him that gun. The real weapon used by the Mysterious Stranger is once again a non-obtainable weapon, dealing 9,000 critical damage and never degrades. It is fancier than the one in Fallout 3, but shockingly, it isn't the most powerful pistol in the whole game now. That honor goes to the Debug pistol, which is a 9mm that does 9,999 damage. So to all you posting 9mm memes, who's laughing now? There's another non-player usable 44 mag, which is Raoul's 44 Magnum, that looks identical to the vanilla weapon, but does a bit more damage and uses companion ammunition, which is the special unlimited kind of ammo that is unique to each companion's weapon of choice and is not visible or recoverable by the player. Also, whenever I equipped it, it would suddenly drop out of my inventory, so Raoul can just keep it. Now for the most unusual of all the 44 Magnum variants, which is Miss Fortune's 44 Magnum. Miss Fortune is a bit like the female version of the mysterious stranger, appearing in VATS to aid the player, but she doesn't rely on an insanely powerful gun to get her work done. In fact, her gun only does 10 damage, which is far below even the base 44 mag, and the critical damage is no better. What it does do, however, is way more interesting. When she fires the revolver, several things can happen to an enemy based on their luck or fortune. The target will be knocked down and either have an explosive item in their inventory detonate, similar to a reverse pickpocket, or their weapon will malfunction so spectacularly that it will create an explosion, like a flamethrower blowing up into a fireball, or a plasma rifle detonating like a plasma grenade. And if the target has none of those items, they will instead have several limbs crippled. The number of crippled limbs depends on how many times they get hit and what their fortune percentage is. But needless to say, no one makes it out of this situation in good condition. When equipping the weapon myself with console commands, there were so many strange effects. No weapons or explosives detonated, but crippling and paralysis was super common, causing enemies to lean in weird ways, get thrown back like they got hit by a truck, and whatever this is, I feel like I just stepped into another dimension as all the body parts start rolling away while still attached, only to have them all snap back together when the NPC gets up. I had spawned Miss Fortune in with console commands, and for some reason, if I was shooting in her direction, although not directly at her, it would send her flying back as well, and this didn't seem to happen with anyone else. This thing is frickin' wild. Fallout 4 only has one revolver in the base game, and we're not counting all the pipe weapon abominations, and the second revolver was only added with the Nuka World DLC. Having these two options only is a far cry from Fallout New Vegas. That said, there are still a bunch of unique 44 pistols, as they are now called, and they are modifiable in a plethora of ways with Fallout 4's new crafting and upgrading mechanics. It is still very clearly based on the Smith & Wesson Model 29 and is the second most powerful of all conventional pistols, if all potential upgrades are considered. Upgrade options include a receiver that increases damage and reload speed, a barrel that can increase range or hip firing accuracy, grips that increase accuracy, and a number of sights that can suit your personal needs. There are a number of unique versions that have different legendary effects as well. The Gainer will light targets on fire for an extra 15 damage per second and can be found in a small, easy to miss location called the Vitale Pump House. A bloodied skeleton is locked behind a door, and some sleuthing will reveal the code. Kind of. It seems that the code is 0451, but it's actually 10451. And this apparently is a reference to a code that has been used in System Shock, Thief, Deus Ex, Bioshock, and Dishonored. The level designer, Joel Burgess, mentioned that its inclusion was a nod to a fellow game developer friend who has a love for, quote, nasty-ass video game magnums. He also said that the skeleton is a reference to the game Snatcher by Hideo Kojima, and Fallout 3 also had a reference to this game in the Capitol Post building. Lastly, the code seems to be a reference to Fahrenheit 451, which I think all these games are paying homage to with this code. Plus, the Gainer lights things on fire, so this reference isn't all that subtle. Eddie's Piece is another unique 44 that is used solely by Eddie Winter, the pre-war crime boss that was being hunted by Nick Valentine. When he is found in a ghoulified state centuries later, he is confronted, and this weapon can be found on his body after, dealing with him. Its most notable features are the crippling legendary effect and a large scope that has been coupled with a snub-nosed barrel for some reason. The name Eddie's Piece, that is P-E-A-C-E, is a double entendre referring to the slang piece, meaning a gun, and the piece that Eddie finally finds when he is confronted by Nick, and they can close their feud. The last unique 44 belongs to none other than the baby snatcher himself, Conrad Kellogg. The pistol is only obtainable after killing Kellogg during the course of the main quest, and has the relentless effect which refills action points on a critical hit. Kellogg and his pistol go way back, and we see in one of his memories that it was given to him by his mother after being told that the only thing that would protect him in this world was that gun. He is seen using it throughout many of the memory scenes, and this is the very weapon that kills our spouse at the beginning of the game. Therefore, I think it's only appropriate that it also kills the other member of our family. Good night, sweet prince. There is one unique 44 with the Creation Club, which occupies that weird gray space we now have between hard lore and fanfiction, so just consider this some bonus information, and this weapon is called Early Retirement. It is available after the short mission that shares the same name, and is unique mainly due to its black finish, which makes it stand out from all the other 44 mags, and has the effect of doing 25% more damage to synths. The weapon's name and effect, along with the short quest, is all a reference to Blade Runner, where we see replicants, which are synthetic humans. When a replicant needs to be decommissioned, they are retired by killing them, hence the name of this weapon. And you know, none of these sections would be complete if we didn't mention the Mysterious Strangers 44, which is back, but rather than the weapon having massive damage, the Mysterious Stranger himself has a unique perk that boosts his damage tremendously. One very interesting thing about the 44 in Fallout 4 is that Bethesda had gone through the trouble of making a great animation for rapidly firing the 44 Magnum. The player fans the hammer as they blast through the 6 rounds in the cylinder, and this unused animation can be re-implemented with mods. Come on, Bethesda, you were so close. The 44 in Fallout 76 is one of the strongest of the pistols in the game and has a truly impressive 32 potential upgrades, which is all the more impressive when you consider that it only had 14 in Fallout 4. There are several unique variants once again, like the Fact Finder, which has 2-shot, explosive, and VATS enhanced effects. This pistol is rewarded after finishing the Mother of Invention quest that was implemented after the Steel Dawn update. Medical Malpractice is another one introduced with the Wild Appalachia update and can only be obtained through crafting, and the plans will drop after completing daily ops. It has a unique black and red paint job with a medical cross on the side and was made by a company called Red Raptor Firearms in Austin, Texas. It benefits from the VATS enhanced legendary effects that increases the VATS hit chance, where a VATS critical will heal the player and their team. The Somerset Special is only rewarded after completing an early portion of the main story after they investigate the Morgantown airport. It has one legendary effect, Anti-Armor, which ignores 50% of the target's armor. The last of the unique versions is the Voice of Set, which is an interesting piece. It is the mythical primary weapon of the Mistress of Mystery, who is a comic book superhero, and her special 44 Magnum had the ability to fire incendiary rounds that could give off choking fumes, as well as disrupt electrical and magnetic fields. The player only gets it after completing the quest Prototypical Problems, which has the player recovering data from a pre-war experimental weapons research program that was dabbling in EMP technology. After feeding this data into a special machine called the Order of Mysteries Fabricator, the Voice of Set will be produced. It does more damage than the base 44 Magnum and does an extra 70 electric damage against robots, with a 25% chance to stun them as well. This is only if the player is also wearing the brooch called the Eye of Ra. Otherwise, the Voice of Set will only do 35 extra damage against robots with no chance to stun. The Mysterious Stranger is back once again with his trusty 44, and similar to Fallout 4, has his Mysterious Stranger perk that grants him tremendous damage. And so ends the saga of the 44 Magnum, but rest assured, this won't be the last we see of this weapon. Fallout New Vegas fully embraced its Western themes and aesthetic, and as such it has the most revolver options of any single Fallout game. The 357 Magnum is a pretty common revolver that is also easy to keep well fed, since 357 rounds aren't all that rare. The revolver seems to take inspiration from the Colt Single Action Army or the Ruger Vaquero, both of which are chambered in the 45 long Colt and not 357. The 357 is a solid step below the 44 Magnum, only edging out its bigger brother in slightly lower spread, and is a solid choice in the early and perhaps the mid-game. It has two potential modifications, the 357 long barrel, which increases damage by 3, and the heavy-duty cylinder, which increases the weapon's durability by 50%. With average weapon health, it has a low strength requirement and doesn't require any gun skills to use its full potential, which cannot be said for the more powerful pistols. There is one unique version called Lucky, which can be found in a hard-locked safe in the Bison Steve Hotel in Prim. It only does 1 more damage than a fully upgraded 357 mag, but can fire much quicker, and has a higher critical multiplier, slightly higher critical damage, and almost 10 fewer action points are required to use it in VATS. It is all around just a better weapon, since it has lower spread and more HP as well. I love the intricate designs, the cursive etchings, and the pearlescent handle prominently displaying a club. This has got to be one of my favorite designs of all the pistols in New Vegas. It gets its name from the engraving on the ejector tube that reads, Lucky. Since Prim is encountered so early in the game, it is possible that you won't have a high enough lockpick skill to open this safe, so it's worth coming back for this beauty when you get the chance, and while the damage it can do is still relevant. The 357 has some cool secrets, like the fact that this is one of the weapons that cannot jam, and since it is a single action revolver, the loading process can be interrupted at any time, and you can fire off the remainder of the cylinder. It is also able to shoot both the 357 rounds and 38 special rounds, which might sound a bit strange, but that is totally kosher in real life as well. You trade lower damage with the 38 special for better weapon durability, so I guess what you choose to shoot depends on your character's needs. The 357 mag also features very prominently within the game, because it is the weapon that the NCR Ranger is wielding on the main menu screen. Although, funnily enough, no Rangers are ever seen using a 357, nor do they seem to have them in their inventories. I almost lumped this in with the 357 pistol, but there are enough differences to warrant its own place. The Police pistol is generically named and was introduced and found exclusively in the Dead Money DLC. It is pretty comparable to a fully modified 357, except it has almost double the critical damage and a good deal less AP required. It also shoots the 357 round, but it looks really different, being a double action revolver instead of a single action, has a shorter barrel, and black grips. It is also shown to be a bit more worn, missing its rear sights, and the surface is just otherwise a lot more weathered. Its design is inspired by the Colt official police revolver, and although there are no modifications for it, it appears that this wasn't always the case. On the weapon's texture map, there is what appears to be textures for a silencer, although there is no associated model, so perhaps this would have been an option for the weapon, and could have been a really nice mod to have while sneaking around trying not to get turbo murdered by the ghost people. I also find it interesting that the cowboy perk does not affect this pistol. I guess it's just not cowboy enough? One of the early weapons in Fallout 3 is the 32 caliber revolver, which is plentiful and rather weak, and is very quickly left behind in favor of the 10mm pistol, which is also an early game option, considering you can leave Vault 101 with one. That was a lot of ones. And it is better in basically every way, with low damage, low critical chance and low critical damage, middling AP requirements, and average everything else. It is a truly unremarkable weapon that only beats out the Chinese pistol, but that is a seriously low bar to clear. This double action revolver is a close approximation of the Smith & Wesson Model 2 double action that was invented in the late 19th century. So it is curious that such an old design is as plentiful as it is around the Capital Wasteland. The real-world weapon was mostly chambered in the 38 caliber Smith & Wesson black powder round, although there were some smaller 32 caliber versions offered, which is exactly what we find in Fallout. It is kind of unique in that it is a top break revolver, meaning that the barrel and cylinder rotate together for unloading and reloading. There is a unique version known as Wild Bill's Sidearm that is introduced in the Pit DLC. It is better than the base 32 in every way, although it is still only doing 10 damage per shot, which puts it on par with a normal 10mm pistol. Its claim to fame is that it can fire very quickly, but that is hampered by the fact that it only holds 5 rounds between reloads. It can be found in the steel yard on the body of a slave known as Wild Bill, who died trying to collect ingots for the slavers. Wild Bill seemed like a pretty good guy, since he volunteered to collect the ingots because he didn't want to see any of his friends die in the attempt, and that choice sealed his fate. Another unique 32 is given to us in the pit, and is simply known as the Concealed 32 pistol. It can only be obtained from Werner, who asks the Lone Wanderer before they go into the pit whether they want a knife or a gun to sneak past the guards. When choosing a gun, it is placed in the miscellaneous tab of the player's inventory, but cannot be used until after being thrown into the pit and losing all your items. The Concealed 32 will remain in the player's inventory when they come inside the playable area, although it is in rather poor condition with only a little bit of ammo. I just want to know one thing. Where did Werner hide this thing to get it past the guards? Oh, it was the prison wallet, wasn't it? A cut unique version of the 32 would have been called the Law Dog, and would have been better than the vanilla 32, but a smidge inferior to Wild Bill's sidearm from the pit. Fallout Tactics usually has a bunch of real world weapons appearing in these lists, but this is the only one that we'll be seeing in this video. The Casull Revolver does solid damage, between 13 to 18 per shot. This makes it more damaging than the Colt 45, although it has lower range and ammo capacity, but also weaker than the 44 Magnum. The weapon's name, appearance, as well as the round it shoots is all a little puzzling. The pistol looks the closest to the 1873 single-action revolver, or some other similar revolver, which was chambered in the Colt 45, similar to the in-game Casull Revolver. What is strange though, is that in the real world, the 454 Casull round is distinct from all other 45 rounds, and it was this Wildcat round that got enough popularity for several companies to make compatible revolvers like the Ruger Super Red Hawk or the Taurus Raging Bull, none of which look like the Fallout weapon. So we basically have an old Colt single-action pistol chambered in the 45 that is given the name of a popular Wildcat round that was a 454 and not a 45. And the guns that were developed to shoot the 454 round look completely different. The game almost seems to acknowledge how confusing this all is, since the item description says that the origins of the Casull are lost to the mists of time. So perhaps in the Fallout universe, the 454 Casull had a different developmental history. It is a rather rare weapon though, and useful in the mid-game until one starts running into super mutants and robots. Fallout 4 got its second revolver with the Nuka World update known as the Western Revolver. Unfortunately, it doesn't look all that much different from the 44 mag, with a blued finish and slightly different grip. The real difference is in the performance, where it does almost 10 more damage per shot, but also has fewer upgrades, with the number of sights it can take a bit more limited. It shoots the same round as the 44 Magnum revolver, and is the most powerful conventional pistol in the whole game, but there aren't that many static locations where it can be found. Usually the first time the player encounters the weapon, it is given to them at Dry Rock Gulch in Nuka World by One-Eyed Ike, a robot who challenges the sole survivor to a duel. It is a classic Western duel where One-Eyed Ike says draw, and the sole survivor must shoot Ike before they themselves get shot. It isn't all that hard if you cheat like I do and already have your gun out. Ike must have a rad roach or two living in his old vacuum tubes, but maybe this makes sense because this was essentially an attraction for kids. But what doesn't make sense is the fact that he gives us a real firearm to do this. Is this a mistake on his part, where he picked up a real weapon thinking that it was a prop or the fake weapon that was supposed to be used? Or is Nuka World really that messed up? I mean, we know the corporations in the Fallout universe are awful, Nuka-Cola included, but I feel like handing a kid a real gun in a crowded amusement park is a step too far, even for Nuka-Cola. The only other place to find this revolver is a fixed location in Mad Mulligan's minecart coaster on the body of Terry Tanaka, who was one of the original Nuka World settlers who was killed by bloodworms while fortifying the area from the raiders who took the park from them. Fallout 76 has the Western Revolver in the same form that is dealing very similar damage as well. It has a lot more crafting options than in Fallout 4, but the 44 Magnum in Fallout 76 still has more upgrades. It is craftable like most weapons, and the plans can be obtained at Point Pleasant, where it has a chance to spawn on a responder corpse. Otherwise, go to Watoga, where the vendor bot Phoenix has a chance of having it in stock. Although it looks and functions like the 44 Magnum in many ways, it is faster firing and reloading, which makes it a more desirable option. The 44 Magnum though seems to have more skin options if that's what matters to you. Alright, so I know the next two aren't revolvers, but I needed to split up the pistols somehow and decided that the black powder pistols in Fallout 76 fit better here than in a video on more modern designs. The black powder Blunderbuss in Fallout 76 is a welcome addition to the variety of weapons we see in the Fallout world, even if it's not the most practical. This weapon fires the 50 caliber ball ammunition like all the other black powder weapons, and like most other black powder weapons, has very high single shot damage. This is necessary though, because it is a single shot weapon that has a very long reload, and if it didn't hit very hard, then it would be completely unusable. The Blunderbuss is an alteration of the M1842 Aston percussion pistol, differing in the barrel, which flares out at the end, which is a common aspect of blunderbusses. Usually, however, blunderbusses will fire several smaller projectiles at once, called shot, much like a modern shotgun. In Fallout 76, the blunderbuss does not fire smaller shot, instead opting for just one large ball round. The unique variant known as Pirate Punch has a 15% chance of dropping after completing the event Eviction Notice. It has a 15% faster reload, which is great for this kind of weapon, increased VATS hit chance, and 2-shot. So hey, it kinda does act like a real blunderbuss. One interesting thing is that the blunderbuss cannot actually be crafted, it can only be received from a drop. The black powder pistol is the cousin of the blunderbuss, looking largely the same but having a conventional barrel. It also seems to do the same damage and shoot the same ammunition, and has a cool detail on the right side where it says that it was produced by Henry Aston in Connecticut in 1850. This weapon is a lot more common than the blunderbuss and can be found in several places like the Philippi battlefield and dropped by enemies. One interesting thing is that the reload animation shows the player pouring in powder from a small powder horn, but gunpowder is never consumed or required to fire this weapon. Only the 50 caliber ammo. I really like using the black powder weapons in Fallout 76 because they're unique and there's just something satisfying about shooting them. Fallout 76 finally introduces a single action revolver in the newer Fallout engine, and it looks and operates like how I expected the Western revolver from Nuka World to operate. It is a good looking revolver and is inspired by the Colt single action army designs, and is harder hitting than the 44 Magnum revolver, but not quite as good as the Western revolver. It has a lower rate of fire, and the reloading process takes longer than the other revolvers. But you can interrupt the reloading process at any point to fire what has been loaded in the cylinder, which can help if all you needed was just one more bullet to put a baddie down. It has the fewest modifications and upgrades of all the revolvers, which I think makes sense since this is an older design, although it can get a pretty sweet ivory grip. There are two variants, the fancy single action revolver, which can only be obtained by getting lucky when turning in a Pleasant Valley claim ticket, and it has a golden receiver and ivory grip. It will have a random 1-star legendary effect and can't accept the modifications that the normal revolver can use. It operates largely the same, although it does have a slightly larger effective range and a quick fire rate. The Nuka World On Tour update gave us Gunther's Big Iron, and this is a special red and white Nuka themed revolver, as well as 20 marks etched on the reloader tube, undoubtedly a record of its victims. It has the 2-shot effect while also benefiting from a higher fire rate and faster reload speed. Unlike the other single action revolvers, this one is chambered in 45 rather than 44, which makes it easier to find ammo for and is a more appropriate cartridge for this older style revolver. It is obtained by completing the event Most Wanted, which was a game where the player runs around a fake western town, robbing places and safes, all the while fending off deputy robots. I am glad we finally got a single action revolver, because I definitely felt like there was a void there after New Vegas gave us so many cool options. And now it's time for the Big Daddy, Fallout New Vegas's hunting revolver. This beast is enormous, having the highest skill strength for any conventional ballistic pistol, and is subsequently the most damaging. It fires the ultra rare 4570 government ammunition, and similar to the 44 Magnum in Fallout 3, is always scoped. Because this thing is so big, it is not a holdout weapon like many one-handed weapons can be, and the low durability helps balance out its very high damage. Despite being so powerful, it's not quite as rare as one would think. Many can be found in various NCR locations, making it surprisingly common. The weapon design is based on the Magnum Research BFR, which was also chambered in the 4570, although it is also chambered for other powerful handgun cartridges as well. There is a Gun Runner's Arsenal version that will accept mods, which are the Hunting Revolver Match Barrel, which decreases spread by 0.15, and the 6-shot cylinder that adds 1 extra bullet for a total of 6 per reload. There was a cut mod just referred to as the Scope, which would have attached a scope to the revolver, but they decided to just have the weapon automatically be fitted with one instead. There is one unique legendary that is one of my favorite looking revolvers in this whole list, and that is the Ranger Sequoia. Just look at that. It comes with a scope, a black frame, and gold etched details, along with a gold bear on the grip, and a gold hammer, sights, and trigger. This is a special edition of the revolver that is given to NCR Rangers that have been serving for 20 years, with the sayings, "For honorable service," and "Against all tyrants," written on the barrel. On a brass plate on the bottom of the grip, the words 20 years is written, and rather than having a cylindrical barrel like the normal hunting revolver, it has an octagonal one. The Ranger Sequoia does even more damage than the hunting revolver and is just a little bit better in almost every way. The hunting rifle upgrades do not apply to this weapon, and as expected, it is a very rare weapon to encounter. Chief Hanlon has one in his inventory that can be stolen or looted from him if he's killed, denoting his long service with the NCR Rangers. There's also a possibility of finding a ranger every so often that has one in their possession, although they only start appearing after level 16, and Hanlon is the only one that always has one. Some funny quirks about the weapon are that it doesn't use the firing sounds from the hunting revolver, rather the 44 Magnum for some reason, and although it is super rare, the ammunition is very expensive, and it is the most powerful pistol in the game, it's not as valuable as you would think. So how about just skip pawning this off at Mick and Ralph's and hold on to it, even if it's just to pull out and look out every once in a while. Oh yeah, baby. And so we come to the end of the list, but before I bid farewell, I want to say thanks for making it all the way to the end with me. I hope I was able to entertain or just help you get through the last 40 minutes. I also want to thank my patrons, and I would like to welcome Ryan Moore and Bountain Mike into the fold of Adam's Chosen. If you would like to help grow Adam's Kingdom on Earth, you can join YouTube memberships or Patreon, or just show your support or appreciation however you see fit. Embrace division, brothers and sisters. Take care of yourselves and others as Adam commands, and I will see you soon.